It doesn't help that the non-Boros, especially Muslims, are believed to resent the autonomy, as well as the BTC as being sops for a group that is now a minority, leading to a view that the conflict may never be resolved. While the politics demands a political solution, the literature from the region talks of stories of struggle, coming to terms with issues of insider, outsider, living in an environment where animosity is embedded.
I mean, in fact, that's one of the things which I've sort of been involved with is trying to bring the literatures from the states of the Northeast outside. So whether it's in English or in translation, but try and bring the writing so that it's also through knowing or reading what these people are saying, what they've been writing about, the issues they grapple with in their lives, which help us to understand who they are. This issue of the outsider, I think, is a very, very major thing, like who belongs to the region. I mean, is it that you're born in Shillong, therefore you become, you call yourself, from Shillong or from the Northeast or being Khasi or being, from Meghalaya or whatever. It doesn't stop at that. It's not so simple and so easy, because just the fact of your being born there, or the fact that you may have, one parent who's Khasi and one parent who is not, you still face problems of the insider-outsider, the ethnicity, the belongingness. So those are some of the issues which I think a lot of them seem to grapple with. A lot of them are also talking about how conflict affects everyday life in these places.
Insurgency in the entire Northeast may be on the wane. There are various factors for this, but one of the reasons is greater people-to-people interaction, a realization of greater opportunities in the mainland, and a future that is linked to a pluralistic Indian identity.
It may be on the wane in, if you look at it in one way, like maybe the body count has gone down or something like that. But that's a terrible way to look at things anyway. I mean, just looking at something as ridiculous as how many people have died or how many people have got wounded, or I don't think that's really the way to be looking at insurgency being on the wane, because the problems which were there are still around. The groups, yes, they've deteriorated into becoming, whether it's extortion and whether they're sort of doing everything that they possibly can do against their own people. All of that is happening, plus infighting between the many groups like we see in Nagaland and other places and Manipur and everywhere. So all that, of course, is happening. But at the same time, I don't think it's on the wane, because people still haven't sort of stopped feeling those feelings.
If you ask me, do they have that amount of legitimacy? Do they have that amount of acceptability among the masses? I would say no, they do not have. In fact, that is not only applicable with NDFB, that is the general scenario in Northeastern region in general and Assam in particular, that insurgents have gradually lost their legitimacy among the people of Assam and people of Northeast India. So that way, in terms of acceptability, in terms of legitimacy, they do not have any kind of, that kind of firm grip among the people. But in terms of domination, in terms of extortion, in terms of intimidating someone, they have influence. In Bihaguri, in Biswanath Chariali, in Baksa, in Musalpur, in lot of areas, actually, those even office goers have to pay their, some about say 3-5% of their total salary to the NDFB.
There is rivalry between the BLT and the Songjit faction. Now, what happens is when one group does this and is able to claim responsibility for it, the other group wants to make its presence felt, their extortion rackets. So, if it depends upon how much presence do you have on the ground, or how important or powerful a threat you are perceived to be, yes, that competitive this thing could bring in other groups to commit similar acts. But more or less these are these two groups, and the alpha still remains, but it's not as big a potent force.
But I think that somewhere along the way, all of us seem to have forgotten what it is to be human, because whenever we read about all of these things, we are sort of so inured to all the ugliness and to the mayhem, to the killing, to the brutality. We read it and we just sort of pass on, but we actually forget that human emotion, human agony, suffering, like in this case, it's these innocents who are dying and suffering, and I mean, so many children have died, women have died. And for us, I think it's a time, I don't know about answers, but it's for us to actually introspect and think about what is happening. Why have we forgotten the basic kind of things that is required of us as human beings, which is being empathetic, yeah.
Taking the human cost of these clashes lightly can weigh heavily on the collective conscience of the state and its institutions. Ultimately, the state is a collection of people who seek representation and solutions to their problems. Has the government taken adequate measures to reduce tensions, and in providing relief and rehabilitation, are NGOs and ordinary people's actions bringing about change?
In the Bodo areas, there are groups of ordinary people who are setting up, whether it's schools or whether it's for livelihood, helping the women in their weaving, or small grants which are coming in. People like the Ant and others who are helping out with smaller, if the government is failing in hospitals and in primary health care and things. So there are groups who are doing that kind of work. It may not be, it may not be really large in those terms, but it is making a difference, and it does exist. There are groups who are for example, between villages there are football games.
In terms of prevention, I do not see any kind of great amount of political will on the part of the state government. Why? I have told it. And in terms of reactive, yes, after the incident had taken place, I think around 5-6 lakh rupees have been granted, or some relief camps have been established. Some people, those displaced people, had been given accommodation. This had been done, but this amount of physical benefit would not heal the wounds. The wounds are irreparable. If some of your near and dear ones being killed, no amount of money, no amount of material benefit can heal your wounds. Those are irreparable, number one. Number two, in terms of prevention, government should have been most proactive. Why we need a state? When you go back to the period of Hobbes said we need a state for 2-3 reasons: to protect our lives, to protect our liberty, to protect our property. Protect our life, liberty and property. These are the 3 most important objectives of a state, of a government. But this kind of traditional role about development, this comes secondary. Physical protection is a very important role of the state.
Oh, surely much more could have been done. Yes, it is true that the particular camp that I went to, they were given an acre of land each. Their huts have been built by the government. A school has been opened for them. Their children go to that school. But I went to that school myself, and it's a small hut, and the children sit out, and there were only 2 teachers, and one of them was ill for 3 months or something, and so a lot more could have been done, and that sense of displacement surely exists as it does in all kind of displaced people. That feeling they haven't, though the government has given them, they've, so to speak, made their home, but they don't really feel, they believe that they do not belong to Kokrajhar. They've come from Dhubri and that's the place they are. And when I asked them, would you want to go back there? They said, it's been 2 years, but they said almost 1.5 years, and they said, no, we don't have that level of confidence where we feel safe to go back, but we long to go back.
It's time now for a very short commercial break, but we'll be right back with more. Stay tuned.